Hello, this is Penny Wilson. Welcome to today's podcast, The Hero's Journey. Today we are reading Chapter 4 of The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson. Have you ever felt like you were walking through a wasteland as you pursue your dreams and your goals, and you don't necessarily feel like you're dying, but you certainly don't feel like you're making progress? That's somewhat what Ordinary was experiencing as he was walking through this wasteland. And I definitely identify with that feeling in my journey through life. So I would love for you to consider and try and recognize in your own life where you notice that your own story parallels Ordinary's experience. Because understanding what your hero journey looks like is so meaningful. I have found so much purpose in knowing where I am in my journey and where I can identify with Ordinary in his story. Ordinary enters the wasteland. Chapter 4. Ordinary slept deeply and woke humming his unfamiliar tune. The fears of leaving his comfort zone were gone now. His border bullies were past him. His step was light as he traveled into the unknown. Around each new bend, he expected to reach the land of promise where he would find his big dream. But he didn't find it. Instead, he soon found himself at the edge of a wide chasm. A haze obscured the view below, and when he reached the bottom, he saw what lay ahead. And what he saw made his heart sink. He saw miles and miles of nothing but sand, rocks, and a few straggly trees. He was standing at the edge of an empty wasteland. How could any wonderful dream live here, he thought. He wasn't sure. But the path continued on, curving away into the dreary distance. So he decided to go on. Ordinary walked and walked. Every time he got hungry, he opened his suitcase and ate. And every time he got thirsty, he opened it and drank. And every time he thought about his dream, he decided to keep going. Time passed. Ordinary's skin burned. His feet blistered. His bones ached. One day blurred into another, and then one day he got hungry and opened his case, and he didn't find anything to eat. That was the day Ordinary began to worry. He called out the Dream Giver for food, but he got no answer. 2 days later, he ran out of water. He called out to the Dream Giver again and again. He heard nothing. Fortunately, that was also the day Ordinary managed to find a trickle of water coming out of a rock. At least now he was only starving. But if he was smart enough to find water, maybe he could find food too. Sure enough, it wasn't too long before he spotted a strange bush with some strange dessert fruit hanging from its branches. Ordinary tried one. It didn't taste sweet, but it didn't taste sour either. So he ate his fill. Still, the Dream Giver was nowhere in sight. More time passed. The longest hours and days Ordinary could ever remember passed. Desperately, he began to look for a way out. One day he followed what looked like a shortcut over a ridge, but it led to a canyon that ended in quicksand. He tried traveling at night when it was cooler, but he kept losing the trail. Every delay made him more determined to find a quicker route, but every attempt only led to another dead end. Again and again, Ordinary lost his way. Again and again he tried, and he cried out for the Dream Giver to show him the way, but no answer came. Why had he ever trusted the Dream Giver to guide him in the first place? The day came when Ordinary finally gave up. He sat on his suitcase and refused to move until the Dream Giver showed up with a plan. But the Dream Giver didn't show up that day or the next. Ordinary had never felt so lost and alone. He became angry and got angrier and angrier, and then a hard, hot wind began to blow. The wind blew all that day and all the next. Sand blew into Ordinary's eyes. It blew into his teeth and ears. When the wind finally stopped, Ordinary stood to his feet. But as far as he could see, there was only sand. The path to the dream had disappeared completely. Obviously, his entire trip through the wasteland had been a waste. Hot tears coursed down his dirty cheeks. "You're not a dream giver," he shouted at the sky. "You're a dream taker. I trusted you. You promised to be with me and help me, and you didn't." Then Ordinary stumbled in despair across the sandy waste, dragging his empty suitcase behind him. His dream was dead, and now he wanted to die too. When he came to a scraggly tree, he lay down in its scraggly patch of shade and closed his eyes. That night, he slept the sleep of a dreamless dreamer. The next morning, Ordinary had heard something. Startled, he perked up to see a shimmering somebody sitting in the branches of the tree. "Who are you?" he asked, as she climbed down to the ground. "My name is Faith," she said. "The Dream Giver sent me to help you." "Ha! It's too late," cried Ordinary. "My dream is dead. When I needed the Dream Giver the most, he was nowhere in sight." "What do you need that you haven't received?" asked Faith. "Well, if it weren't for a few sprigs of water I found," "Certainly," answered Ordinary. "I'd certainly be dead of thirst by now." "Yes, and?" she asked. "Ha! If it weren't for the fruit I found, I'd be walking skeleton," he replied. "Wait, I am a walking skeleton. I could die from starvation any minute." "Oh my," Faith murmured. "And?" "Well," huffed Ordinary, "a little guidance would have been nice. Ever since I came here, it's been one delay after another. I've been wandering in circles since I don't know when. What a waste." I see," said Faith, nodding. "So, what will you do now?" "Just tell me how to get back to familiar," he said. "I'm sorry," she said, "but I can't help you with that." "That figures," Ordinary said. "The Dream Giver sends me a helper who can't even help." "You might be right," said Faith, "but that's not for you to decide." Then Faith walked away in a direction Ordinary felt sure was wrong. It wasn't long before Ordinary began to have second thoughts. What if he was wrong? He wished he hadn't been so rude to the somebody named Faith, and he began to miss her. He realized that while they were talking, he had felt hope for the first time in a very long time. Ordinary jumped to his feet and scanned the horizon. "Faith!" he cried out, but she was nowhere in sight. "Faith!" he cried again, but there came no reply. Then Ordinary had an idea. He climbed the scraggly tree to the top. From there, he could see Faith in the distance. As quickly as he could, he climbed down and set off in the same direction. Later that same day, Ordinary was eating some fruit beside a trickle of water when he saw his journey through the wasteland in a whole new way. Food enough for the day. Water when he needed to drink. A path to follow that led to Faith. How could he have been so blind? Even when the Dream Giver had been nowhere in sight, he had always been near. That was the day too. that Ordinary looked at his empty suitcase and decided it was time to leave it behind. He made a makeshift knapsack and took his dream journal and feather and ink and walked on. After that, whenever Ordinary came to a straggly tree, he climbed it to look for Faith. And when he had her in his sight, he marked the direction and started walking again. One day, Ordinary met some dreamers returning to Familiar. They told him a sad story. They had come to the wasteland and nearly reached the land of promise, but when they encountered giants so large and overwhelming that the dreamers felt as small as grasshoppers, and the Dream Giver had been nowhere in sight. The nobodies sounded convincing, and he recognized their weariness. But as they continued talking, he saw something more. They had stopped trusting the Dream Giver, and now they were traveling in the opposite direction from Faith. When the nobodies strongly warned him that what lay ahead was too hard, he saw something else. He had changed. His trip through the wasteland had not been a waste. Now he was prepared for what lay ahead, no matter how hard. "Travel safely," he told the returning nobodies. "But I will be going on." As Ordinary pressed on through the desert, his dream beat brightly in his chest again, and the more the sun blazed, the more Ordinary believed that he could find the land of promise, no matter how long it took, if only he took the way of faith. And one morning on the far side of the desert, Ordinary wrote down the truth about the wasteland. "After crossing the waters, I thought my dream was just around the corner. Instead, I found a wasteland. I was disappointed by the delay, and my doubts about the Dream Giver only made things worse. Now I see that the wasteland was not a waste. It has taught me to trust the Dream Giver even when he's nowhere in sight. I think I am stronger now. I am following Faith, and every day I feel more prepared for whatever lies ahead." End of chapter 4. If you have any thoughts on this chapter of how you see that this relates to your own life, I would love for you to post anything in the comments. Share your thoughts about where you are on your journey, because you are the hero of your story. Looking forward to connecting with you and hearing your victory. Have an amazing day. Bye.